Hi, guys. I wanted to go ahead and leave a review of the semester for you as you're working on your essay. And the reason I like to do that right now is that I think it can really help to go back through and think about all of the skills we've been building this semester as you think about how you want to build this final project. So, the first thing I want to do is just look over the assignments. So, this semester you've had 5 major Dropbox assignments. We started out with the synthesis essay, where you looked at a few different sources and you thought about how you could bring those ideas together in your own words. So that was our initial really big look at bringing sources together to work with your own voice and to work with your own ideas. We then moved on to a stakeholder essay where you were really examining the way that different voices play into a conversation. In that essay, I also really wanted you guys to think about who it is that you might be addressing in an essay. And we'll look at that a little more as we go through skills from the semester. But just remember those skills from that essay as being finding all the different voices that are coming in. Your exploratory essay was more recent. You guys will remember that. We really dug in that exploratory essay into looking at what the conversation was, what the different pieces of research were that were interesting to you, and what some of the major ideas were that you might want to explore further in the essay we're doing now. The annotated bibliography then really built on what the sources were that were available. That showed your ability both to summarize and to evaluate sources. And then it also asks you to think about, just like the stakeholder essay, what voices were going to come into the conversation and how those voices would be useful to you in writing your essay. Finally, we're in the research argument. That's, of course, as you know, what you're writing right now. And this essay is really designed to bring together all of your research skills, all of your abilities to find the threads of arguments, and really help you place your own voice in the larger conversation that you're exploring. So this semester we started out, the first discussion we had was about plagiarism, and that discussion really asked you to think about the difference between, I would say, kind of fair use of other people's thoughts and ideas and the abuse of sources. So in that discussion, we really looked at things like, how do you give credit for ideas? How do you balance other ideas with your own when you're doing a lot of research? So from there, we moved on, and I would say generally, in terms of ideas about doing research and using research, we move on to summary and paraphrase. I've also included synthesis in this part because that's a major way that you use your sources. So, just like with the plagiarism discussion, we looked at how do you give credit properly and how do you make sure you're not using too many sources. As we looked in a few discussions at summary, paraphrase, and synthesis, we got more into looking at the different ways you can use ideas. This doesn't include quotation, but of course you've got quotation too. You want to make sure your quotation is minimal. You can summarize, so you can pull the main ideas out of a piece. You can paraphrase, put in your own words the things that you've read. Or you can synthesize, which is bringing a bunch of different ideas together, mixing them up with your own, and creating a new idea or a new perspective into the conversation. Synthesis is, I think, the end goal for what we do, although that never gets rid of the need to summarize ideas, paraphrase ideas, and use quotes to really make sure you're representing other people's thoughts well. The next thing that we've really looked at all through the semester is citation. So, from the first conversations we've had through to this last essay, I really want to make sure you guys are thinking about citation as a way not only of giving credit for other people's ideas, but of really helping your readers see where you've been in the conversation, what ideas you've drawn on, and how you fit. So there are a few things with citation that are important to keep in mind. One is that in-text citation, where you're giving credit for ideas, you're giving credit for statistics, and you're also crediting sources within the flow of your essay. Remember that in MLA format, most in-text citation will be a parenthetical, very brief parenthetical note of the author's last name or the short title of a work. If you have page numbers, include them. If you don't stress that. But really, the big idea of an in-text citation is that it's just a little brief thing that points people to the correct citation within your works cited page. The works cited page then builds a much larger set of information, and that's the information that tells your reader how to go outside of your paper and find the reference you found. So citation is usually author's name, last name, then first. Title, you'll have your publication information, where it's published, who published it. If you need an URL, you put that in there. So that works cited page is really your place to tell the readers what is it that you've used. How did they go and look that information up now? The next major idea that I wanted to talk about from class is finding and evaluating sources, and I included your visual sources in this slide. So with finding and evaluating sources, some of the work we've done is looking at different types of sources. So how does a popular source differ from an academic source, a peer-reviewed source? What's the difference between a website and a reference work, or a website and a journal article? And part of the idea behind having you guys find all of those different sources has been to help you really think about the different ways that we get information, the different purposes that those kinds of information can have, and how those purposes can impact the way that we use a source. We also want to make sure that you're finding good quality sources, so whether it's a popular source or a peer-reviewed source, we want to make sure that you're able to look at that source and think, who wrote this? Why do I believe this person? When was this written? What kinds of sources did this source use to get its information? And really the big idea behind that is you don't necessarily want to believe everything you hear, whether it's in person or on the internet. So are you using sources that really give you the best representation of information? One of the things we looked at within our source explorations was visual sources. That was the assignment. You had 2 of them where you had to go and find different kinds of images that helped highlight your research. That really, I think, culminated with the PowerPoints you did, where you pulled a bunch of different kinds of visuals. And that visual source, I think, can be a really helpful thing just for, number one, getting good, quick access to sources, giving your readers good, quick access to information. So that's the kind of thing you would find in an infographic. But also, a lot of you found pictures. And I think pictures can be really useful in making that appeal to pathos and to ethos to an extent, to help people see what the actual impact of the issues are that you're looking at. Along the lines of finding information, finding different kinds of sources, towards the end of class here, you've done a few kinds of primary research. You did 2 interviews this semester, so you talked to someone, you found information on your own authority to help bring in and start looking at, I would say in part, the creation of knowledge, right? You created knowledge in your field by going and doing those interviews. You also did another kind of experience. A lot of you did surveys. You could have done some other kind of experience, going to a zoo or a museum, going to a prison facility, I had a student once who was looking at food stamps, and he tried to live on the kind of budget you would get if you were getting food stamps. So all those different kinds of experiences help you gain new perspectives on the topic that you're studying. Finally, I wanted to touch again on stakeholders, because I feel like in any kind of a persuasive piece, especially, we just can't overemphasize the importance of understanding your stakeholders. There are a few reasons for that. The first is that stakeholders are often the voices that come into the conversation that you're joining. This person who has this role in this problem thinks this. This person who has this role in this problem thinks this. Stakeholders are also often your intended audience. So if there are people who have some kind of a major investment in the conversation you're joining, those are the people who you want to address. And it may be in a standard persuasive piece that you are looking to change the way people think who think differently than you. It may be in a proposal type essay that you actually want those people to take action, and your stakeholders are going to be the people who can take the action that you're looking to have them take. So understanding who these people are, why they think and do what they do, and how their thoughts and actions play into the larger issue is critical in deciding how you are going to address the audience, and in deciding how you're going to address opposing viewpoints. Which ones are you going to look at in your essay? Why are they important to the argument you're making? So stakeholders, I think that understanding of stakeholder is absolutely critical in putting together a really good persuasive piece. Finally, I wanted to reiterate this idea of avoiding binary thinking. And I think that's something we've really been looking at and exploring all semester. So binary thinking is that kind of thinking where it's this or that and nothing else. And those are common types of arguments. They're kind of common in our daily life. Do I think this? Do I think that? Do I want to do this? Do I want to think that? But binary thinking really reduces issues and ideas that have a lot of complexity into much simpler terms. So part of what we really want to encourage for you as academic thinkers is an understanding that there's more than one way of looking at an issue. There's more than one answer in a conversation that's satisfying. So keep that in mind also as you're building your piece. Okay, so that's the end of my brief semester review. I hope that was helpful, and I hope it's reminded you of the skills that you have to bring to bear for this final essay. I look forward to seeing your drafts, and this weekend I'll look forward to seeing those final papers coming in. We're almost done, guys. Keep up the good work.